conference with the keynote. And for our last talk, we actually have a dual presentation, so we don't have one but two speakers. We have Jacqueline and we have John. And Jacqueline is a digital equity advocate and software engineer, building change from the code up. Within a year, she traveled, I think, at both Jacqueline and John are globetrotters. They have seen a lot of the world. But John is a privacy and accessibility advocate and program manager, influencing change through action. And also seen a lot of the world already. Jacqueline's pronouns are she, her, John's pronouns are he, him. And today they'll talk about accessibility insights. Catch accessibility bugs early and often. Jacqueline and John, whenever you're ready, take it away.
I think you're on mute, John.
We can't hear you, John.
Thank you, and my apologies.
Hey, we can hear you. Awesome.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Wade, and I'm a program manager. My pronouns, as was mentioned, is he, him. I am a white male in my mid-30s with shortest parted brown hair. I'm wearing a black cotton shirt with a gray knitted cardigan.
And my name is Jacqueline Gibson. I'm a software engineer. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Black woman in my early 20s with short black locks that are currently pulled back off my face. A couple are kind of sliding under my gray headphones, but it is what it is. And right now I am wearing a purple hoodie. So John and I are part of the Accessibility and Web Insights team at Microsoft. Our team builds free and open source tools to empower other teams to find and fix accessibility issues in their web, Windows, and Android applications. We're both really happy to be here today to talk more about accessibility. So one of the things our team continues to evangelize is the importance of shifting left and including accessibility early in the design process. And so I'm sure all of you who are attending today have received this message from the presenters before us, but we'd be remiss not to emphasize this. Catching accessibility issues early and often through testing is the best way to ensure that your products are inclusively and accessibly developed.
That said, we know getting folks on your team excited about accessibility can sometimes be challenging. We have found the same approach doesn't work for everyone, and it's often not enough to tell others it's simply the right thing to do. A lot of teams are encouraged to fix accessibility issues for compliance and legal reasons, but many developers have shared with us they don't know where to start.
And it can be even more stressful if the first time you're considering accessibility is at the end of product development. Trying to fix bugs and ship on time, it just doesn't create a great environment for learning, and especially for retaining accessibility information. And it often results in quote unquote fixes that are barely usable and don't create equitable experiences for users of all abilities. We also hear from teams that they're worried about accessibility work adding more time to their development process. They genuinely don't know how and when to prioritize accessibility. And so something that we share with them is that it's better to build accessibility into your development process and check consistently rather than wait to the end and address it.
One of the strategies we have found helpful on our team is building accessibility passes into all pull requests and product releases. While it initially seems like it would take more time to add these steps up front, we found that it improves our validation process. We catch most accessibility issues before they're merged into the main code base, and others are caught and addressed before we release to the public. The benefits of doing it right the first time are worth any of the concerns about additional testing time. You may be able to recruit other accessibility advocates throughout the company just because it is the right thing to do. The more people you have thinking about accessibility, the more likely issues will be caught before they are problems.
Exactly. So, John, I think we've talked a little bit about why teams should shift left and consider accessibility early and often, but how about we switch gears and jump into a demo and show some examples of how accessibility insights can help?
I love examples. I think our web extension is a great starting point. Would you mind screen sharing, Jacqueline?
I totally don't mind. Let me do that.
Perfect. When Jacqueline's screen does share, perfect. We are showing a website of a faith university called Accessible University. It has a carousel with images, some submenus, a form to apply, and some text at the bottom.
So, John, if you were interacting with the site for the first time, do you think you could comfortably say it's accessible?
At first glance, it's hard to say. For software to be accessible, it needs to be usable for people of all backgrounds and abilities. and it's our job as development teams to verify this is true through accessibility testing. Developing for all users is where it gets tricky for a lot of developers because unfortunately, some teams don't give accessibility the priority it deserves.
That's true. A lot of times people might think of accessibility as something that's not important because it, quote, only inconveniences some people. But this is a horrible way to approach design because it's never okay to exclude a portion of our users, however small you think that portion might be. So in reality, the portion of users who benefit from accessible designs, it's not small. It's actually 100%. Every single one of us will need accommodations or accessible features at one point in our lives. So be it for a permanent, temporary, or situational change in ability. So a great example of this spectrum and ability is to consider the following set of scenarios. So there are users who have one arm, so that would be a permanent change in ability. There are users who have their arm in a sling, perhaps they've broken or sprained their wrist, so a temporary change in ability. And there are users who happen to be working from home and trying to parent, so they might be having a small child in one of their arms and they can only use the other one. So that's a situational change in ability. And every single one of the users that I just mentioned can benefit from being able to navigate a website only with the keyboard. So as you can understand, everyone benefits when we put accessibility first and when we design it inclusively.
That's right, Jacqueline. The first thing we need to remember is that accessibility needs to be considered in every step of the process. Just like you cannot add sugar to a cake after you've baked it, you cannot just sprinkle accessibility into a product after it's been built. Unfortunately, in this case, the site has already been built, so we're already at a disadvantage. Let's pretend we're the development team for this site, and we want to know if we need to make any accessibility changes. What's our first move?
Okay, so if I were a developer for this site, I would use Accessibility Insights for Web to test its accessibility. So if the name didn't give it away, Accessibility Insights for Web is our team's browser extension, and it has two main workflows. So I'm going to open the first main workflow, which is FastPass. And so that identifies common accessibility issues in less than 5 minutes. We also have the assessments view, which offers a detailed analysis of a site's accessibility. And we are assessing that based on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, also known as WCAG. Both of these workflows are powered by Xcore. So just for fun, let's take a couple minutes. Let's run FastPass on this page. All right, it's running. I'm going to push this down a little bit so people can see the errors on the screen. And so the first thing that happens is that Automated Checks has found several issues with our Accessible University page. And so I don't need to be overwhelmed. There are a lot of boxes drawn around these errors. They are red with a white exclamation point showing us that, hey, this is something that needs our attention. But when I expand any of the failures, I can see exactly what the issue is, where it's located, and it tells me how to fix it.
That's pretty cool, Jacqueline. One thing I've learned working in web accessibility is the importance of color choices, especially for those with different vision needs. Can Accessibility Insights help developers with this?
It sure can, John. In fact, ironically, the first issue that's on here is a color contrast issue. So when I expand this, not only does it edit the visualizations on the target page and only highlight those 4 failures, but when I go back to the extension, it shows a little bit more information and it tells me there's no sufficient contrast for these items. And oh, great, it's even offering me a color choice with higher contrast to make it easier for me to update the color when I go back to the code. And so if I want to learn more about this rule, I can go to the resources for this rule section, and it'll have additional content with examples that explain to me why color contrast matters and how to fix it.
Trying to remember all the guidelines and requirements can be a bit overwhelming, especially when you're new to the accessibility space. But one of the things our team has prioritized in our tool is making the information easily digestible so any user can learn about accessibility. You don't need to be an expert to test your site's accessibility and fix common accessibility issues. Earlier in the presentation, we talked about users who navigate by keyboard. Is there anything we can do to check if our sites are accessible for them?
Yes. So the next step in FastPass is called Tab Stops and has a visualization that shows me how a user using keyboard only, so not using a mouse at all, will navigate my page. So just like an automated checks, I have all of this awesome documentation when I open this part of the assessment, and it gives me information about why this is important and useful. So I'm going to turn on the Tab Stops visualization now, and it's redirecting me back to the testing page, which is Accessible University's landing page. And so I'm going to start hitting the tab button. Okay, so every time that I hit the tab button, a small circle with a number inside of it appears with arrows connecting it to the circle before it. And so this helps me as a tester understand the order that the keyboard user will encounter elements on the page. And it also shows the overall flow of the website for those who are navigating via tab key. So for the sake of our site, I'm going to stop tabbing now. I now notice that there are more accessibility issues than I originally thought. So for example, some of these menu items didn't receive focus, and the carousel and the landing page in the center where there are images, if I was a keyboard user, I couldn't use the left or right arrows there and switch the image. That's a problem.
The FastPass experience is speedy and helpful, but what can developers use if they want to dive in deeper and solve even more accessibility issues?
So that's where our assessments come into play. So I'm going to expand our extension here in the window. I'm going to switch views into the assessment flow. And so assessments, we have over 20 different assessments, and it's a guided process that lets you leverage both automated testing, so similar to what you saw in automated checks, and manual testing. And this way you can check against even more accessibility standards. And so each flow in this assessments view provides even more information than is available in like that first FastPass experience. But it's really great because there's rich information about why it matters, how to fix the related issues. There's examples and links to detailed documentation, and sometimes we'll even include snippets from a user perspective or additional videos on how this requirement affects users interacting with the site. So lots of ways to learn more and improve the accessibility of your site. A little bit more than we have time for today, though.
Thanks for the quick and informative demo, Jacqueline. I'm going to share my screen right now. This is another option that enables teams to run automated accessibility tests, but inside an Azure pipeline. The tests use Axe Core, which is the same scanning engine we use for accessibility insights for web, the extension Jacqueline just demoed, and Axe Windows, the scanning engine we use for AI, the scanning engine we use for AI Windows. The repo, which we'll post a link to, has some projects for the web projects and resources for those building Windows applications. Let me pop this URL into the chat right now. The biggest takeaway for you is that you don't need to be an expert to start considering accessibility when developing software and learning more about accessibility.
Exactly. And that's the main reason that we're here today. Because all of the information and requirements that go into accessibility testing, quite frankly, can just be overwhelming. But that's where our tools come in. We work hard to present the information in a way that's easy to follow and clearly outlines the steps you need to take to ensure that your products are more accessible. Our team's goal is to meet you wherever you are in your accessibility learning journey and empowering you to make more accessible products for all of your users. So thank you everyone for following along. We hope that this has been a helpful intro to our web tools and that the talking points that we shared with you will help you in encouraging not only your team, but other teams to shift left and consider accessibility early in the development process. But before we finish, we just wanted to emphasize that Accessibility Insights is completely open source and free, and we have a few other tools. So in addition to what we've shown you today, we also offer accessibility testing tools for teams building Windows and Android applications. And so if you're interested in connecting with our team or even making contributions to any of our products, you can find us on GitHub, on our documentation site, which is accessibilityinsights.io, or on Twitter, where we are at A11Y Insights. So we'll hopefully be able to drop some links to these in the chat, or we can send them out to people who've attended this talk so that you can connect with us. We're always happy to chat and work together on making this world a more accessible place. So now we're happy to take some questions from the audience. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much both. And yes, we do have a couple of questions for you. So where can we learn more about using the tools? Oh, hello. Is this thing on?
It's on now.
Yes, hello. Sorry, we're doing this live. So thank you so much for your talks. Yes, we do have a couple of questions for you. Do you know where we can learn more about using the tools?
Yeah, so you can check out our YouTube channel. We are Accessibility Insights there, and we offer videos on how to use our tools, different tips and tricks there. You can also go to our documentation site, which is accessibilityinsights.io, and we share information on onboarding to the tools, frequently asked questions, lots of things to help people if they get stuck onboarding for sure.
Thank you. And John, where can I get updates about future products?
It's a very similar source, actually. We keep our YouTube channel updated with all of our new our future product updates, as well as our Twitter account. So just to plug that Twitter account one more time, it's at A11Y Insights, and that is where you can see all of our new and upcoming product releases.
All right, thank you. And let's check the chat. So if I run AI web on my site and I pass all the assessments, is there anything else I need to do?
Yes. So we've mentioned that we are checking and assessing against the WCAG guidelines. And so we do help you assess your site for at least WCAG 2.1 AA coverage, but we recommend that you still check in with your company's legal contact just to make sure to see if there's any additional accessibility considerations you'll need to consider for your site to be fully compliant.
And if I'm building an accessibility tool, where can I list it or get considered to be included in Accessibility Insight? John.
I'm sorry, what was the question one more time?
Sorry. If I'm building an accessibility tool, where can I list it or where can I get it considered to be included in Accessibility Insights?
Oh, interesting. I'm going to have to defer to Jacqueline, or we may have to get back to you on that. I don't have an answer for that. Do you?
Yeah, so if you're building an accessibility tool, kudos to you. I don't think that you could probably list your tool as part of the Accessibility Insights suite, since that's something that our team builds. But if you're looking to build potentially like a feature or make a contribution to our tools, you can definitely reach out to us. We'll talk to you via GitHub and see what we need to do to get that approved and reviewed for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. And another question that just came in. How do you see the intersection or the difference between the WA-WCAG guidelines and Microsoft Inclusive Design?
So I would consider them as two players on the same team. So our inclusive design is about, quite frankly, closing the digital divide and ensuring that anyone, regardless of ability and background, can benefit from Microsoft tools. And you can't build inclusive web technology without, of course, abiding with WCAG guidelines. And so that's what I would describe the intersection as, working together to achieve the same goal, which is creating equitable and inclusive technology.
John, you
hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
No, that's well said. I don't think I have anything to add to that.
All right. I think we have 2 more questions. I think we have time for that. So do you have any suggestions on how to crawl and scan an entire website for accessibility issues versus just running the scan on your homepage?
Yeah, so we've actually built an internal tool for that just runs the extension across every site, and we're looking to see how we can maybe bring that to a broader audience. So that's something that we are investigating right now. In the meantime, taking that same approach internally for a tool yourself would be a great way to look at it. Or if there's an open source crawler that somebody wants to take some time and see if we can integrate with the GitHub repo that we have currently, it would be an interesting project to propose. Maybe I'm speaking too much for the engineers, but yeah, that would be something interesting that could be brought to the GitHub repo.
And I think we have one final question. Is there an accessibility insights in the works for Mac desktop?
That currently, I can't speak to. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Yeah, I was going to say, currently I cannot say that we're working on one, but if you think that that's something that we should look into, please reach out to our team, because we built the tools, but we also like to get input from the community about what they need for advanced accessibility testing. So if there's interest in that, please definitely reach out to us so we can have a further conversation about what that could potentially look like.
Yeah, exactly. Just to echo exactly what Jacqueline said, we keep an eye on the GitHub repo for what people are asking for. So that is the place.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, both you, Jacqueline and John. I think we're so far out of questions. And we're going to go for a quick break before we go to the keynote of Donna. So thank you both again, and hopefully see you at a real-life conference.
We hope so. Take care, and thank you for the time.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.